Grant.
Hello,
It's
mate.
rare to get us in a room together, let
know.
alone in the same country or continent together.
Right? These
But
days, it is a rare occurrence.
So, I think people will be really interested in getting some of the perspectives of some of the things you've done this year, because you've been doing all sorts of amazing stuff, meeting some amazing people. You've done some kind of epic presentations that people really loved as well. So I'd love to just start with that, and we'll just get into, just shoot the breeze and see what's on both of our minds and where we're going and what's interesting us and stuff like that.
Look, these conversations are always so much fun. We haven't had a chance to have one for such a long time. So the fact that everyone else gets to listen in on them will be actually really good.
I think
really
it
good
might
fun.
have been this time last year.
I think you're right. I think it probably was. Well, look, you kick off. You start, and then I'll take you in a completely different direction. How's that?
Yeah, so I think everybody's been fascinated with the In Conversations With interview. I mean, it started off with, I think one of the best pieces of kind of immersive journalism of any form was the Mark Cahodas.
Yeah, that was something.
It must have scared the shit out of you thinking, how am I going to do that again?
No, do you know what? Well, it did, but it's funny because it's one of those things that I didn't know Mark. I'd seen Mark present at Jim Grant's conference, and you're like Joe Duran. There's sometimes you just get, there's one little piece of someone that you just kind of go, wow, that's interesting. And Mark was such a real guy, right? He's honest, he's open, he's balls to the wall. He doesn't care what anybody thinks, but there's a truth to him that is just amazing. And that's what we wanted to do, right? It was, let's get to the truth about this stuff. Who better to do it with than Cahodas? So, we went out there to his farm, and he and his wife Aurora and his son Max just couldn't have been nicer to us. They said, right, place is yours, we'll take all day. And he's just one of those guys you sit down and you connect with. And that conversation, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it just now. There was one point in that where we were in his stables and we were talking about the '08 crisis, which for a short seller should have been, the happiest days of his career. And I kind of knew the story. I knew roughly what had happened, but not the detail. And I just kind of wanted to mention it because I knew people at home would be watching and going, well, '08, surely that must have been a good time for you. So I kind of just said, look, tell us about your experiences in '08. And when Mark started telling this story about what had happened to him and his fund during that period, he had tears in his eyes. I had a lump in my throat, and I could see friends behind the camera also getting a bit choked up. And it was so powerful, but real. It was real. It was an honest reaction to an honest question. And we kind of had to cut afterwards, and we're both being very sort of planes, trains, and automobiles. How about them cowboys about it all? But it was so powerful. And you're right, when we finished that, Franz and I, when we finished editing it and putting it all together, we both looked at each other and said, holy shit. Yeah, this is a high bar. But the guests have been just fantastic.
What was also great about the Mark Cahodas interview is that teed off a story that we've been able to follow on Twitter. And I know Mark's going to come back. Talk a bit about the MyMedX story and that whole perspective, because I don't know whether people have followed it, but that teed it up. He kind of introduced that thing, and then that whole thing's been playing out.
Well, it's a phenomenal story. I mean, Mark's done this for his entire career, and he said to me at the time, he said, "This is the biggest fraud I've ever seen, hands down, bar none." And subsequent to our visit, literally a week later, he had 2 FBI agents show up at his door.
I know.
Basically threatening him.
Prompted by MyMedX, right?
Prompted by the CEO of MyMedX calling the senator for Georgia, who's calling the FBI. I mean, this is what Mark feels he has pretty strong proof of, and we will film the story. We're literally working the dates out now. We'll film it sometime in January.
Because he's saying there's a whole lot of stuff we don't know that went on that he can't reveal yet.
Well, I've been privy to it. We've become very good friends after this, and he's shown me some of this stuff. It's extraordinary, and this story is going to bring down an awful lot of influential people, and it just, when they talk about the end of cycles and when all the corruption and stuff comes out, this is going to be such an incredible lightning rod for people to get a look at what happens in the good times and how it unravels in the bad times. And look, this has taken a toll on Mark and his family. I saw them a couple of months ago, and it's been a really tough year for them as a family, as people. And Mark did a Periscope recently saying, "I'm done with short selling. I'm not going to do this anymore." Because because it's just, I don't know. We'll see. He might be back because it's so deep within him, this hatred of fraud. But it's been a brutal year.
Because it's like being an investigative journalist with your money on the line.
Yeah, exactly right.
And that's really hard to deal with, particularly when what you're doing is fighting people. Well, it's not like short selling as, I think this stock's going down.
Correct.
It is having to build an intense case and then going to battle to try and bring it out. I mean, that takes a different kind of gumption.
It does, and you're always aligned against not only powerful interests, but also nobody in the market wants to hear fraud. To that point, you and I have spoken so many times about when it turns, and this stuff all comes out. So if you start to see frauds appearing, people know we're turning. We're getting to that point where people suddenly care again. When the good times are rolling, no one cares if it's fraud. It's just going up. Let's buy it. So to take a stand and the abuse Mark has had on Twitter and places like that, and he sticks his chest out and says, look, I'm here to be shot at. Say what you want. The truth will out. But no one should have to go through that. And there are other things that hopefully we'll get into today where this is happening.
Thank God for people like Mark
Yes.
as well, right? So, I mean, that's been one of your themes. I think if there's a theme that I look at in conversations with, you have a love of the short seller and you have a love of the value guy.
I do. And I wear that on my sleeve.
So talk me through it. Why? Where does that come from? And talk us through some of the guests that you've had that kind of inspired you in that journey of discovery of those two things.
The value thing has always resonated with me. And there's a truth and an integrity and an honesty to that I think is important. And again, this is why you and I connected over Real Vision, because it's something that's important to us. This idea of truth and fairness and equity in that sense of the word is important to us. And so, when I talk to these guys, the value guys, it's something that you can see and you can quantify and you can make a judgment on what is value. Value is subjective, but if someone tells you this is how I measure value, it takes away a lot of the opacity, a lot of the unknowns, and you can say, okay, fine. If he's valuing it on that basis, do I agree with him? Do I not agree with him? Do I think that is the correct way to value it? It's a yardstick. The short selling side of things, I find fascinating because it's the hardest thing to do. I've done it throughout my career, sometimes successfully, sometimes terribly, poorly. But oftentimes it's just timing. You can get the story right. Like my medics went up after Mark brought this stuff out before it crashed to earth. And when I talk to these guys, I want to understand, like, how do you get this right? How do you do it effectively? How do you not get carried away with the emotions of it? Because it is an emotion thing, because you are saying, okay, you're all wrong and I'm right. And this is why. And if it's just a case of overvaluation, that's a really dangerous hill to want to die on, because valuations can get nuts. If it's a fraud, and our mutual friend Roddy Boyd has been through this, and I know you've spoken to him a bunch, I've spoken to him a bunch. You're basically out there saying, look, everybody, and waving flags that no one wants to listen to. So I'm fascinated in how you deal with that mentally, being set against everybody else.